Welcome to episode number 38 of the Turfcast podcast, and also welcome to 2024, and I guess you could say the beginning of the lawn season, at least from the looks of everything outside, which we'll get into our weather talk soon. I don't even know what month it is because it certainly does not look like January outside, but joining us tonight again, as usual, Mr. Ryan DeMay, RD. How was your holiday? How are you? How's everything going?
RK, it could not be better. Just like everybody else, being launched out of that human cannonball act that they have at the circus, getting back to it in the new year. And I don't know, there's a lot that we haven't talked about in the ensuing 3 months, since we last recorded. Now we talk. I want everybody to know that it's not like, we are like Khrushchev and Kennedy, and we just, go some separate direction or do something different, when things happen, or we don't have a conversation. So take that for what it is, and, it'll all be okay. But no, good holiday season. And I don't know, for a while there, last, 10 or so days of the year, RK, I stopped working, just hung out, chilled out with the kids, wife, had a good time. Kind of felt good.
Yeah, that's
just stop for a minute.
That's a big change of pace for you with how crazy you've been going the last couple seasons. So I'm sure that was very different.
Very different, but I don't know. I have to do that now. I've realized that. I've learned that, and hopefully, maybe someday, RK, you'll learn that. But I don't know if that's coming anytime soon.
I'm getting there. Yeah, I've been working on that. I've actually, I've been taking a break, I would say, from some of my usual stuff, but that just pretty much means I'm moving into other things to keep me busy. We're still finishing a bunch of our house stuff, and I was going to say, in case you haven't noticed here, I'm sitting in front of a very different setting than I normally am, but I have this whole brand new, wonderful home, and I decided to pick the smallest room right here that I have in the place to fit all of my gear in, microphones, mixers, cameras, lights, everything. I don't know why I decided to do that, but I think it does actually look fairly cool. At least that's the goal, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I like the aesthetic. I like what you've done with the cell, we'll call it the turf cell. It's about that size, roughly, of, not like one of those nice prison cells at like the state jail. This is more like county, not quite what you'd expect to see, at the Iowa State Penitentiary, but it does look good. And what else are you going to do with it? You're not the kind of guy that has a walk-in closet per se, right?
Oh, we do have a walk-in closet for the first time ever, and that actually just got finished too, or at least it's close. Jeez. But
man, you're growing up so fast.
I know. It's just all these things. Got a king bed now. Just almost turning 40. That's what happens, I guess.
The advancements in life are astounding, RK.
Though the king bed, this is a tangent, but seriously, all that allowed the dogs to do is get more space and still kick me out of the bed. So I don't know how that works, but it does.
Yeah, I think the territory, or the slice of the percentage, however you want to look at it, from a geopolitical standpoint, inside the bed, no matter what size you sleep on, is roughly equal to 3/4 of the size of a full twin mattress. And it doesn't matter where you sleep, whether that's on the floor, on a king, a queen, anything in between, you're relegated to that specific area. And if you take up more than that, then, well, God help you. Bad things are going to happen no matter what. So, I don't know. I think the, all that stuff about like Sleep Number beds and all the commercials you see for mattresses and things like that, I always look at that with a very, very suspicious eye, because it's like, listen, I'm going to pay for the whole mattress, but I'm not going to get to use the whole mattress. Right. So do I really want to spend, X number of dollars on said mattress? I don't know. There's just some things in life, RK, that you just have to resign yourself and say that, hey, I'm gonna get the most out of this, but I'm probably not going to get the best out of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit of weather, I think, right off the bat. And I don't know. Wow. Seriously, in my craziness, I was looking at the forecast and thinking that if this could just continue a little while longer, I seriously might go out and do some mowing because there was enough stuff that had just grown, just, that maybe a quarter of an inch since the last time I mowed, that I thought, I might have to go out there and take care of that. But I've refrained from doing that so far. And it is looking like next couple of weeks, it's going to be getting into not super cold January, but more normal for us. Maybe the possibility of some snow, but I just don't know if that's actually going to happen or not.
Yeah, I mean, here Christmas Day, I could have walked out there in flip-flops, a tank top, and my nut huggers and been very comfortable. It was quite a nice day. And even still this week, I think it's been, around 40, here the first week of the year. So do have some wet weather coming in. But yeah, the fall, from the last time we spoke all the way up until, present day, it's been a very, very, very mild fall. Now, you've been dry. We've had timely rain. We've had, plenty of moisture and, no major issues to speak of in terms of nothing I would call bad weather by any stretch. So I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of people that are in your case. I mean, so we ended up, the last conversation we had, we were talking about, bent grass or bluegrass for my lawn. I ended up going with bluegrass, and I couldn't get the exact style that I wanted just because of logistics and some other stuff, but it worked out fine. But I'm looking at this grass, and I mowed it, probably right around Thanksgiving time. And right now I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I should probably just go ahead and mow this. I mean, part of me is thinking kind of a little FAFO and go out there and scalp it down, RK, and just really make the neighbors nervous.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if they saw you out there to begin with, that'd be great. And then you just doing a scalp, that'd be even better.
Yeah, I think, they were a little, I had several people come up, but one gentleman asked me, well, what was wrong with this before? I said, it was trash. It was garbage. It was a bunch of zoysia grass mixed with fine fescue. And, just, it was everything that you wouldn't want to have in a cool season lawn. And so he's like, really? It looked like it did fine, and I'm like, I don't know about that, partner.
Those are the new words. It looked like it did fine.
It looked like it did fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I went ahead and, did that, that procedure for your appendix, did the appendectomy. Notice a small tumor in there. You might want to have that looked at, like a good bedside manner there. It looked like it did fine.
Yeah.
So, and then I had another guy come over, and he was like, he was walking past, and he's like, you know what you're doing here? And I said, absolutely not. I have no idea. It's probably going to be trouble when this whole thing.
No, but I watch YouTube.
Burns alive. I have a story about YouTube to tell you here in a few minutes, but no, the weather though, preceding that project and following it has been just about perfect. I mean, really, I got to say, for a 12-month stretch, if I go back and look at, where we're at weather-wise and grass and everything like that, like it has been maybe, at least for me here in Ohio, I can't speak for you in Iowa because I know it's been tough, and I can usually watch your weather and kind of guess within like 2 or 3 days of when you're going to text me with a bunch of expletives and be like, expletive weather.
Yes.
But here, I'm telling you, it's been probably 12 of the easiest and most simple cool season grass growing months here in my part of the Midwest as I've seen in 20 years.
I'm hoping that maybe next year could turn into that for me. I mean, I can at least hope. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but
yeah, I don't know what that'd be interesting to look at, see what El Nino springs look like for Iowa, because it has, for the most part, kind of followed the script of being a strong El Nino and the things that you typically see in those winters and the summer, fall, and all that kind of stuff preceding here where we are in January. So I don't know. I'll have to look into that and see how things shake out for the month of.
I did a little bit of
February,
looking on that, but I couldn't find a lot of great info as to. Just depends, I think, on when exactly this is supposed to end, which I think they're thinking maybe in March is when it might the El Nino might end, but I'm not sure exactly. So all I can hope for is that we don't go from one extreme to the next, which is like it never ever stops raining next year, which is probably what will happen because that's just about how things work. It seems like lately it's either nothing all at once or any of that. But we did finally get about an inch of rain. I think it was sometime in December because we got nothing in November. That was when I was texting you and I was like, all of my irrigation is shut off and this is literally like the worst my yard has looked this entire season. And is there anything I should do about it? You're like, well, probably start watering again. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to pull hoses everywhere on the 100,000 square feet of things that I have to work on. But
yeah, and I mean, that's one where, and people that are listening might say, well, watering your grass in the winter. I mean, you did a video on that several years ago in a similar situation where, desiccation is the term that we use, where, the plant, even in a dormant or semi-dormant state, it can lose enough water that the crown, right, the kind of the torso of the turfgrass plant can die off, right? And so in those cases, right, we're trying to prevent against, wind can cause that, just dry air from cold, dry air and exposed ground, right? So snow cover can be our friend in those cases. I mean, there's actually a golf course out there in Nebraska. It's kind of in the western part of Nebraska, pretty high end place, but it doesn't look like it. It's very rough and tumble around the edges. It's in the sand belt there, western Nebraska. They actually go out, RK, and they spray hydro mulch on their greens to cover those and protect those. So rather than put a cover down or something that might have a propensity to blow off or maybe get things too hot, if they do get into a warm stretch or something like that, create too much of a greenhouse effect, they spray all that hydro mulch on there and then, just kind of chop it up. They take a rotary mower over it in the springtime, chop it all up as best they can, blow it off, and they're back in business. So yeah, that'd be a little fun video for next year, right? We always talked about renting the hydro mulcher. Well, hey, let's do it while the stakes are low instead of, blowing it all over a bunch of seed and then it's not going to rain for the next 60 days. Like that's no fun.
Well, I had a friend that had one, but he just sold it. So that's probably not going to work. But yeah, I was just seeing a bunch of, dry to the point of, not just like, oh, everything looks dry, but like wilted, lots of just dry spots that were hard as a rock as far as the soil goes. And so my main concern was really just on the newer stuff. Like I know most of the things that have been there for a few years already are going to be pretty hardy and pretty mature and can go through a lot of different things. But I had just a lot of those new areas that were only basically like maybe 8 weeks old probably at that point. So putting it through that type of stress wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I really think after that rain that everything looks like it bounced back pretty good. And like I said, it really has grown just a slight amount. My bluegrass plots, both of them look absolutely greener than green and fantastic. And the whole ryegrass big field and everything, you can come up the gravel road and kind of see the edge of that. And just, it stands out right now too. It's still very, very green. So just very, very weird stuff going on weather-wise, but that's just how it goes.
It is how it goes. I've seen a lot of bluegrass that's hung on here and done really, really well. The tall fescue, some of it's turned, just from the cold temps we've had in the mornings and being exposed. But, we've had not even a dusting, barely a dusting or trace of snow. So to be at this point in the Midwest, you haven't had any measurable snow, have you?
Like an inch. That was, yeah, it didn't last for more than about 12 hours probably, and then it was all melted. But
yeah. I think what'll be interesting too is, the effect, and we saw this, I can remember here, the winter of 2000, I think it was 2011 into 12, perhaps, something like that, where it was a incredibly warm, mild winter. And I just remember the insect pressure in particular that following season was just biblical. I mean, stuff where you were making applications, good applications that you knew would work and beat back. And here's the thing too, with, most of the insecticides that we use, talking particularly about white grubs, is we are trying to reduce the threshold, right? So if we kill off, 75% of the normal population of grubs, right, we shouldn't see damage. It's not to say, we've talked about this before, okay, that you might not see any grubs whatsoever. You're going to see grubs, but it's when they get, above, say, 8 to 10 grubs per square foot that you're going to see commercially damaging, consequences. So if we can beat back and keep that number down to like 2 or 3, you won't even notice it. But I guess what I'm saying there is that in that spring and summer, after that really warm winter, it was like those normal populations were at the far right end of the bell curve. So, where you were killing 75%, let's just say, of the population, you still were touching that 8 to 10. Like, you had some spots that were still up in that range because there were just so many of them. Mm-hmm. So I tell people that to be wary coming into this year is, choose your grub control appropriately. So, choosing Grub X or choosing chlorantraniliprole, Celiprin, if you're going to buy the name brand fun liquid stuff. But that's going to be a huge thing, I think, coming into this year in certain locations, and moisture drives that a lot. So, when we do our, our springtime talk on grubs, we'll dive into that a little bit more. But it's just amazing how, not amazing, I guess it's just nature, but it's amazing how those, antecedent weather events, set the stage for what could be a tough year.
Right.
Or maybe it'll be easy street this year, okay? You don't know. Maybe it's going to rain a quarter inch every third day. It's just going to be life, life on the gravy train with biscuit wheels.
Talking about the insect thing, not only for lawn stuff, but for me here where I live now, we have had quite a bit of a tick problem in the past here. And I think it was late fall that my wife was out walking our dogs in some of the areas that I've mowed down. They're not super tall grass or anything like that, but our dogs came back just absolutely covered in ticks. So I think that's also going to be, for an area like where I live, a more rural area, probably something that we're going to have to deal with even more than usual with that warmer weather. I saw it last winter where it just didn't feel like, we didn't get maybe like a week or two of pretty cold weather below zero. But other than that, it was fairly mild too. Not as mild as it has been this year, but especially the tick stuff. I'm going to have to see what I might be able to do about that. I know some prescribed burns and things like that could probably help with some of that stuff, but that's another thing I'm going to be looking at for this next season, where it's very difficult to even go enjoy certain areas of the property just because of how bad they've been.
That's kind of crazy that, there are, things you can do from a spray aspect, but again, it also gets back into, why are you spraying? Are you spraying for humans? And, maybe they're not going to go into certain areas, but a dog, you really can't control where they go. So yeah, I think that'll be more on the vet side probably to stay clear of those. But I don't know, maybe turn the moles loose, let them eat all the ticks.
Yeah.
Food pyramid.
I've got enough of those. I got enough of everything, I think. But I try to keep everything, like they pretty much stay on the trails for the most part, but it's just even that, just this last year has been pretty bad for that. But
speaking of the trails, I was going to ask real quick, how's the brome?
It's fantastic. It's green again. That's what's crazy. It's starting to grow again. So I'm not doing anything to it to stress it out or anything. It's so precious to me now that no, it's actually I was out in some of the trails a few days ago, and I noticed that things were greening up kind of underneath all of the brown on top. So again, very strange, but it looks like, I think, about like 4 or 5 degrees is coming for lows for about a week or so in the next couple of weeks. So that should probably shut everything down again.
Yeah, I'd say. But, well, I was just curious of how, in these different weather months, what it was doing, if it was behaving itself. So that's good to hear. You need a strong, healthy brome crop. The brome prices in the market are going to go up this spring. I have no doubt in my mind. So we got to make sure we get a good harvest.
I've been thinking about, you're not gonna be surprised by this, but I'm not even done with my first golf hole, and I've been thinking about the second golf hole, because what I noticed is that although this field is a good spot for it, it's fun. There's just, there's not a lot of area there to get any bigger clubs and get any good distance out of it. So I was playing around with a few things, and I was thinking I could just make like a natural brome course out in some of these other areas. Just let it be, not water anything, not do anything, and just see what it turns into. It'd be maybe the world's first.
You're going to mow the brome,
Yep.
and that'll be the golf course.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Well, I was doing some testing on mowing last year, and it actually looks fairly turf-like. So there you go. If it's already there.
You can improve your lie. Pick the ball up, place it where you want. We don't have to play it as lies. This is, Westbury Acres Golf Club. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. You could probably go kind of cross country too. You crisscross the property. Hit one over the barn dominium, and play it like that. I don't know. I like it. There's a lot of topography there too that you could really have some fun with.
That's been my issue. Is every tee shot that I've been looking at, I don't have a very good view of the green just because of the way that the rolling hills are. So I haven't found a great spot for that, but I have a few ideas that I'm working on. And next time you're here, we can, it might be done by then. Who knows?
Flagpoles. We need flagpoles so you can see you have an aiming point, or red maples. It's another classic golf course architect trick. Put the red maple back there. So
that's a good idea.
See, all right, these are things we can overcome. Challenges, not huge, So the first brome golf course, okay, Brome Country Club.
Mm-hmm. How's your Bermuda been doing? Obviously, in this warmer weather.
It's fine. It's gone. It's even with those temperatures, it's been dormant now for probably 2 months or so.
Yeah, mine is too, but. Definitely, it's probably not going to be the best test of how cold tolerant the stuff that I planted is with this type of winter so far.
Well, it's interesting. I was reading a tweet from a guy named Jim Barrett. He's a turfgrass breeder and professor out there at UC, or University of California, Riverside, and he was showing some test plots out in Las Vegas. And what he was saying is that's sort of the mecca, if you will, of winter dormancy, because, they can be kind of on the edge, of some years they might have a little bit of green in there, and other years, they'll have none. And what's interesting that he noted is that, they do the newer Bermudas, the ones that we talk about here a lot, the iron cutters and the Tahomas, do have that low temperature threshold that they can, kind of hang in there a little bit longer, but they also go dormant at a slightly higher temperature than some of the other ones, and that's as a protective measure, right? So that's the way they were bred in order to survive the cold, right? So if it gets cold quickly, it goes into dormancy and kind of hangs on. Like I said before here, the real trick will be is if we continue to see these warm temperatures, and now we elevate a couple of degrees or 10 degrees average, right? So those days where maybe here it's touching 60 and, you're still back down in the upper 30s at night or something like that. Well, now if that goes to 70, and you're in the low 40s, again, that yo-yo effect in the springtime, that can be really, really detrimental in those new cold tolerant Bermuda grasses. So I'll be interested to see that. That's kind of my fear right now. Fear is a strong word, but my concern is that we see, again, this warmer temperature trend continue, but we get into quote unquote the danger zone, but still have some, kind of spikes back downward. So we'll see how it goes, but we're going out, tomorrow or Friday, and spraying a bunch of Roundup all over those things. So ones that don't have overseed on them. So more and more going away from overseed. I'm sorry, less ryegrass out there in the world, but we have one client though that has pretty much said, you will pry this ryegrass overseed from my cold dead fingers. You can spray it out in June when I'm done with it, but do not touch it until then because it's beautiful. So, but they had. Did you watch the Rose Bowl?
I did. Yes.
So what's interesting, that was the first time in 18 years that they did not replace the field. before the game. So usually they play the last UCLA game there, and it's usually 4 to 6 weeks they have to grow in that new field, right? And they've done all sorts of different iterations. They've done Bermuda, they've done heavily overseeded Bermuda. They've done a lot of different things, but this year they had the same field, grew it in, and played on it all year, and then just did another overseed on top of it. And I thought it looked and played as good as it has. It didn't look, fake how it has in some of these past years, which isn't like a concern. But
Right.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it looked fantastic. I mean, from some of the reports that I heard from players and I think was it JJ Watt or something had posted that he's obviously been on a lot of grass fields in his life, and that it was when he was on it that it was just fantastic. So
yeah, the best field he's ever been on.
Yeah,
high praise.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been on RK's ryegrass though, so give it time.
Yeah,
give it time.
Maybe eventually he'll play some golf here. You just never know.
We have to have if the Brome Grass Country Club becomes a thing, we will definitely have to have a who's who of the Midwest come out, for an outing. And I mean, again, you get to, it'd probably be one of those things where you get to have like 2 clubs, like that's all you're allowed, and just, go out and have a good time.
Back when I was a kid and, growing up where I did in the same type of, farm country, we used to have the Cowpie Open, which was out in a pasture. There's nothing done to it. You get 2 clubs, I think it was. And if you hit it into a cowpie, then you got to play it exactly where it is. So that's how it went.
Ooh. Yeah, we didn't have anything quite like that. We had the Chili Open, which is played every year in January. And they would usually play it, like in a farm or something like that. But it's a huge fundraiser for, I can't remember, it was some type of children's charity or something like that. But I mean, an absolute drunk fest from start to finish. Bunch of people out there and, like Carhartts and winter gear, a lot of Hunter Orange out there, and they played no matter what. Like if it was 34 degrees and raining, didn't care. And people slogged around and played it out. So I don't know, maybe something like that. Okay, maybe like like the weekend between Christmas and New Year's, we try to start that up.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. Just something after I get more of this stuff finished. Definitely, I want to be able to enjoy it myself, obviously, but with other people too is the whole goal. I'm not going to go to all this work for just me to sit here and hit a few golf balls every once in a while. At least that's my plan. But
I appreciate that. No, seriously, because I don't know, that whole grass is a museum thing. Not that I don't think you ever afflicted with that, but I also think too that the intention of it is not to just be strictly ornamental. Like there is a functional use for it in most cases, and so. I embrace it. And here we go. So the Hell or High Water Open, we'll play it the day after Christmas in 2024 or 5. Book it.
Day after Christmas. Yeah, that could be quite interesting.
Hey, who cares?
Yep.
I mean, listen, you have to ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Not that bad. It'll be fine.
Somebody,
trips over themselves.
Just take the snowmobile to your ball. That would work.
Somebody gets a little too inebriated and trips and rolls all the way down the hill into the creek. I mean, yeah, that can happen. But everybody has to wear a life preserver or something like that. We'll make sure it's OSHA approved.
Yeah, that is funny that at my old place too, a lot of people would come by, on Halloween or sometime when there's actually people coming by, and they would be like, can I like touch the grass? And I was like, what do you think it's here for? I mean, yes, it's nice to look at, but it's not like you can't walk on it. So that was kind of funny.
Just have like water balloons, a Super Soaker 50 at the ready to, non-violently, non-lethal ways of keeping them off lawn. I was talking to, I don't think I told this story, but I had a football coach in one of our projects that I talked to him. It was definitely after the last time we recorded, and I said, hey, how was the field this year and all that? And they had bluegrass that was mowed at like an inch or 7/8, something like that. And um, he said it was the greatest psychological advantage you could ever have because the other team would get off the bus and they would walk out there and you'd have the coaches and the players saying, is this real grass? And he said the first 20 minutes of warm up, their kids would be, locked in, just doing their thing. And the whole other team would be, down on all fours, touching it, taking pictures of it with their phones. And the coaches would be, just talking about it. And he's like, listen, we're already in their head. That's 20 minutes of preparation they didn't get done because they were too enamored with it. So, there are functions outside of just, stepping on it, running on it, scoring touchdowns on it, all that it can elicit. So
yeah,
I think there's that psychological aspect of it too.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty interesting to see some fields like that, like some of the stuff that you've produced with high school players, from the past, probably not really ever even thinking about playing on a surface like that at a high school. So that's pretty cool. But
yeah, training people that, there are other ways to do it besides just, seed in some grass, do the old aeration overseed, broadcast it and hope for the best kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, days of that are still here to a certain extent, but also gone by too.
Yep.
So
watching some of the NFL games, obviously it's been later in the season or, since they've added the game and things just seem to keep getting later and later. It's been interesting to see how some of the fields have been holding up. But that's something that I've been paying attention to just because I know that you know a lot of the ins and outs of many of the fields, but I did go to the Chiefs game on Christmas Day. A friend of ours won some tickets and we got to go along. So I got to see that field on Christmas Day, which obviously it hasn't been that cold, but still in fantastic shape. I'm just amazed at how many games they can play on a lot of these fields with NFL, guys running around and how good they look.
Kansas City is I would say a special situation just because they have all the tools, all the resources. And that's not an indictment on them. It's to say that they take full advantage of all those resources to keep it like that. And that's, again, not knocking other folks because some of them don't either have or don't want those resources. So it's interesting. But one thing that's going to come into full view here coming up next year is college football playoffs. So it expands to 12 teams. Those first games are going to be on campus at the highest seeds, right? So I think I looked at the dates for next year. I think it's December either 19th and 20th or 20th and 21st.
Yeah.
So you have games that are going to be a full, 3 to 4 weeks later than what these college teams are. So what's interesting is like Alabama, for example, they redid their entire field prior to this season, all the way down to the subgrade back up, put a sub-air system and put a heating system in. So the idea there is that, part of it's playoff, part of it's, the rest of the winter and everything like that. But part of that is playoff. So if they get into a tough, stretch of weather leading into a playoff and the likelihood that they would probably host, a game at some point, these next 2 years or whatever, it should be, you'll see a lot more of that. I think a lot more people that are, sort of future proofing their fields or at this point, the future is now. We're almost through that entire phase. Right. So, lots more to learn and see, but yeah, the technology and what those guys have now is just, it's crazy. It's not even comparable. That's what everybody's, getting all riled up about. Aaron Rodgers hurting himself on some turf and MetLife and all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, that's great. But, there's literally tens of thousands of fields, that are, not safe or could be better or whatever. And it's not an indictment on turf. It's just the way it is, no matter what it is, turf or natural. There's fields all across the country that kids, that aren't getting paid millions of dollars, they have to play on. So
yep.
I don't know. That's me getting on my soapbox for a minute, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but I look at some fields around here in some of the areas that I'm like, oh, not exactly, it doesn't look like the safest place to be playing, especially some of these that just don't have a lot of irrigation or lots of things that going into dry years where you're just looking out there like, I don't know, should anybody be playing a sport out there or not, but we've been doing this for a long time. So
we going to play tennis out here, or we going to play football?
Yeah.
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 Tough.
So what are some things that you're looking forward to in the next year? Maybe some projects that you have, or something maybe on the top of your mind that's coming up?
Ooh. We have a lot more projects this year. We have a lot more people working in the company now, so our project load is increased. Or I guess the chicken or the egg kind of thing. Is our project load increased, so we had to increase people, or vice versa? I think it's a little bit of both. But we do have some of our first real professional projects this year, and that's not to say that we haven't done those before, but from kind of start to finish, projects that we're a part of and have planned, in some cases for 2+ years, to get to this point we're going to construct. And so, excited for that, excited to see that through and get through, having some good products out there, but a lot of high school fields. And, I'm trying to think if there's anything super unique that we're doing. We do have, two of our projects that this year will be huge in terms of just the overall areas. So some of them are one site is 20 acres of fields that's going to go in. We have another site that's like 11 acres. So these are big multi-use sites that are going to get a ton of play. In a variety of sports, right? So soccer, football, lacrosse. Tournaments, leagues, practices, all kinds of things, and park settings and things like that. So it'd be interesting just to watch those, because when we go into those things, it's not just, how to grow grass and how to build it. It's also, all right, you get through construction and you've finished the sprint, and now it's time to run the marathon, right off the bat. And if you're not prepared and knowing how to do that, and you can appreciate this. And I some people would be like, well, growing Ryan's lawn is not the same thing as growing a sports field. Yeah, it's you haven't seen Ryan's lawn up close, okay? RK's lawn, it's pretty much right on point, okay? And that's not blowing smoke. That's being honest. You could play a game on that. You could play several games on that. It'd be fine. But the idea, though, that oh hey, I finished the growing, everything's hunky dory, and like you're not backing off. You're not turning down the intensity. You're just shifting your focus to a whole different set of tasks that become very, very important, so that you don't show up 2 or 3 years down the line and be like, oh my God, like a bomb went off. Which, don't let me forget, we're still going to go back to your old house this coming year. We're going to do it on camera. It's going to be like HGTV. We're going to put you on the street, dramatic music, the big reveal.
No, I've refused to do that.
Oh, we're gonna tell you we're taking you somewhere, and we're gonna chloroform you and blindfold you and wake you up when we get in front of the old house. I'm already working out with Kels. Don't worry about it. Okay? Do you like the smell of chloroform? That's that Hall Pass, I think, is that movie. So project wise, it'll all be fun. We're like I said, a lot of the stuff is stuff we've done in the past, but we learned how to get better. And I think a lot of what we've learned is just the grass growing parts, the easy parts, the people, the politics, the money, all that kind of stuff that you have to work really, really hard at and help people understand. And part of it's like being a teacher. You're going to the same, different places or having different groups of people, but you're talking about the same things, over and over again, and you have to be comfortable with that. And it's kind of in the same vein as YouTube. So I think there's a lot of corollaries between, what you've done and now what we're doing. You just did it in a much different and broader way. So,
yeah.
And didn't always have the feedback of what other people were doing once they got that information. But, we see it and live it every day. So I'm excited about this year. The one thing that, I wanted to talk to you about too, with respect to this year. So I really think one of the things we're going to do on our sports field management side. So we have a group within the company that, in schools, in park systems, and private sports organizations that can't take care of their own fields, right? So you used to work in a school system, right? So imagine that school had a janitor, a custodian, or an outside guy that just mowed, something like that, sort of a generalist, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe didn't have as much training or background or anything like that in sports fields. And so we've had folks come to us, not the other way around. This was born out of people come to us and say, hey, we can't do this. We can't hire the right person. We can't take care of what we want to take care of the right way. And we can't retain these folks and keep them up to par with everything that's going on as far as advancements in the field. And so would you come and do this? Because we don't need somebody 40 hours a week, but we do need somebody that's, 25 or 30 hours a week, depending on the time of year and the season and everything like that. So we've broken into this in the last, 12, 14 months, something like that, and really gotten it going. It's going well, but one of the things we're finding is just that bottleneck of labor. So, from a labor standpoint, I've always said, don't ever want to have to just hire like a dude. You know what I mean? Especially coming from the school system, and it's like, all right, this guy's a dude, like a person that's going to fill the job, and he might be here 3 days. He could be here 3 months. And if he's over here, if he's here more than 3 months, I might try to learn his name, instead of just calling him Keith, like I do everybody else that starts here. It's just easier. So the question I have for you, and I want to debate's a strong word, RK, is the robotic mowing thing. Okay. You're in a similar situation where you have too much ground, not enough time.
Yep.
Is there a place, and what have you seen? Because I think you're still kind of far removed. Like you haven't seen it like really up close for a long period of time, just like I have. And it's like, what would it take to prove to you? And that's what I'm wrestling with right now in my mind. Is like, how do I put this through its paces to really vet out, hey, I gave it a fair shake and it either did or it didn't work out. So
yeah,
I need to workshop this with you tonight and figure out how would you set it up and how would you determine on your property, right? Let's talk in your context and I can apply it to mine.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest with you, I've already been thinking about this a little bit in the off season because I did run into a lot of situations last year where just the sheer amount of work for one person, just maintenance wise, not talking about the rest of the stuff that I do of video, not talking about my online business, not talking about any of the rest of it that takes up plenty of time on its own, got to a point where, yeah, I love doing turf maintenance, but it also became so much of a chore sometimes that I get offers from people and emails from, different companies all the time, but most of them are just things that I'm like, yeah, you're just after me making something and you're going to give me something that I don't really need. But I have been getting more from the robotic mower. I don't know if I would call it now an industry, probably yes, but there's a lot of them coming out. I don't really know how to vet which ones seem like they're worthwhile or they're not. That's the thing. But I have been considering it for maybe some of the areas that I have that I still love mowing. I love to do all of that stuff, but if it could really cut down on some of the stuff that I just, set it and forget it and let that happen, and it does the turf like it does the cut the way that I want it to, then I'm coming around to that idea. I think for someone maybe who just loves mowing and a homeowner and that type of thing that it has been like me in the past that has a much smaller area to do. I had never considered it before just because I'm like, well, you're taking away really the one thing that I love about taking care of my grass. But for me now, I'm getting to a point where there's so many things to do that I do see that as a possible benefit. And I have been also talking with a few people that you may know from some of our friends here that maybe doing like using one of the pieces of equipment that I already have to like add a GPS system to it to try to do some of that stuff. So those are things that I've been thinking about.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anything to debate, really.
Well, it's not so much debate, I guess. Okay, so I agree with everything that you said right there, is that as much as anybody loves mowing, like there is a point where maybe not to replace 100% of your mowing, right? If you want to go out there and mow, like grab the mower and go for it. Like nobody's saying that, this is the robot of the assembly line that's taking your job per se, right?
Yeah.
But it is more of a tool. And I think that's how I view it, and I've come to view it, is that I don't think it's going to replace 100%. I don't know what an appropriate level would be. I've kind of done the ROI on this to figure out, okay, hey, if we have this mower and it can mow half of the acreage that we have to mow at a certain site or whatever, what's that cost to benefit? When we talk about what's the cost to to put the mower in here and to operate it, which the operational costs are really very low, but also to maintain it. You got to change blades, you got to do all that kind of stuff, and then there's still time involved in terms of programming it, dealing with issues that come up, technology and otherwise, and just kind of sorting through things. So, here's my question: is how are you? That's big picture stuff, all right? So down at the smallest level, what situations are you, or would you put it in, on your property? You're probably not going to have it mow around the house and flower beds and stuff like that. So where do you see deploying it so that maybe it takes up, maybe not all of the mowing, but it picks up a lion's share of it? And then more specifically, because you are hyper focused on quality of cut issues, you do have a good eye for it. I mean, what have you heard? What have you seen? And what are you looking for when it comes to understanding that the way that those things mow is completely different, right, than a standard rotary or a standard reel unit?
That's where I would say my knowledge right now is lacking in terms of what they're capable of doing compared to what, I might expect. So that's one thing right now that I think I've learned over time, is that the mowing aspect of everything you do is so important if you want to maintain it and have it look a certain way. So it's not just about having a reel mower, but a lot of the areas I don't reel mow. But the reason that they also continue to look so good, in my opinion, is because I'm out there mowing them sometimes every 2 days, probably 2-3 days. Even if I'm barely taking anything off, like just the amount of doing that, as far as not stressing out the plant and not letting it get too tall and then coming out and hacking it, and those things I think have been really important. So that's why I think that the robot thing, with the consistency of how it just goes out, even if it's every single day and takes off the smallest amount of grass, I think that would be a big benefit. So for me, I've thought about it in really any of the plots that just are pretty much right now open, like a square open piece of grass, or even considered it on, maybe in the future, depending on how it goes, like on the big field area that, last year I just became a slave to everything that I was doing here, and I didn't get to do a lot of the fun things that I like, which is traveling and, meeting new people and getting new content and ideas and stories and things like that. So that's stuff that I want to be able to say, hey, you take care of this. This piece of equipment takes care of this for 2-3 days while I can go somewhere and do something else. That really would be a huge benefit to me. And it's not like I want to give up mowing, because I still want to be able to just say, hey, today I don't want that to do that. I'd like to do it myself. But just the option for some things would definitely be nice.
That's very similar to how I see it too. That there's a time and a place where it's going to be the primary, and there's other times where it's going to be the backup. Finding out when it can be the primary. So for instance, like I could see this where maybe in the spring flush, right? It can't keep up. Maybe because the size of my lawn and the capacity of the mower to mow is, stretching it to its limits, and maybe this just isn't going to work out. Maybe I do have to do, some mowing, on my own, as opposed to the robot or something like that. But you bring up a good point about the frequency of cut, and that's really the benefit that has been looked at. And I actually heard, can't remember where I heard that. I think it was an online webinar. I think it was Frank Rossi from Cornell was talking about this recently, where they have robotic mower plots there at the university. And what they've seen here, kind of stretching into, if I don't remember, but I want to say it's like year 2, 3 and beyond, that the frequency of mowing is causing the turf to tighten up and become more dense. And they're seeing less and less weed pressure in those particular areas, because, again, the frequency of mow causes the grass to tiller just a little bit more, become more dense. It crowds out weeds. And so I don't know. I think there'd be an interesting use case for you in that setting. I mean, I think we could, do some proving of certain concepts or things that other people are seeing and ground test some of those things. But no, it's just getting to that point of, okay, if you set up a thing, it was, I will just try it. I don't know if I'd want to go into something like this, like you said, to give up something that's so important as a cultural practice and just say, we'll try it. Well, how do I measure success? How am I setting this up to be so? And I'm curious from our listeners too, if there are people that have gone down that road. I know that we have a lot of mowing freaks, if you will.
Yeah.
I use that term endearingly, not judgmentally, mostly. But I think it'd be interesting just to see what other people have experienced with it. And I know there's going to be tech pitfalls. I know there's going to be things where, you look at your phone or the app or whatever the user interface is, and you're going to be like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Yeah. That's why I think that I have some really good use cases, like a 4,000 square foot rectangle, essentially, that I have as a plot. Like, just going and saying, I'm just going to test this piece of equipment on this. It's not going all in on everything and trying to conquer the whole world. But for something like that, I really see it could be a huge benefit for me to just do some testing and see what it looks like. And then if it looks as good as I hope it would, then maybe we can start deploying it to other areas. But
yeah, I think that'd be the other thing too for both of us is the scalability factor, right? So, determining a appropriate test site, that you can measure and have some good info, get some good feedback, data to collect, and then, okay, how do I deploy this and bring it to a wider scale, or do I need to get more units? And so, but the ability now for, like for example, the Husqvarna units, I know the Crest units are doing this too, where they're mowing straight lines. You can set the pattern effectively. Now you mentioned the GPS, like on a zero turn or something like that. There's a couple different. Well, I know the Ventrac, the Tracknology folks, I think will have a device that will be able to do that. They're debuting that here this month at the Sports Field Manager Show down in Daytona, and then they'll do it at the Golf Course Superintendent Show too. So I'm anxious to see what that really looks like up close. But then there are, I can't remember the name of the company, but there's another company, I believe they're here in the Midwest, that they've taken actual zero turn mowers and just made that platform like completely autonomous.
Yeah. Yeah. A friend of ours that I was talking to, he said that, because I was talking about spraying first, I'm looking for maybe a possibility of using a piece of equipment that I already have, the UTV or something that I can maybe have it set up GPS and spray the big field and do all that. So I was talking about that, and then he was mentioning the zero turn thing. Like, once you get this going here, there's other technology too that you can have it even mow with a zero turn, and you're not even sitting there. So that would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think that's the other. So that's the guidance piece, right? Where maybe it's not autonomous, but at least from an auto steer perspective, when you're spraying and or mowing, it'd be nice to have that. So I could see, in that case, I think that's where the unit that I'm thinking of from Tracknology is one where you could outfit that like on the Ventrac and pool, have a pool behind sprayer or something like that is behind you. So more ways to spend money, RK. We're always we're always looking for. But listen though, there's something to be said for. And I know there's going to be people, you're just trying to get RK to open up his checkbook. Listen, I'm opening up mine too. It's not a measuring contest or anything by any stretch, but we do have limited amounts of time and lots of to take care of, and we need to do the most efficient thing that we possibly can with still having fun though. Like I don't think we're trying to automate anything out of our lives. I think we're just looking for what is that balance, RK? I get, and that's like there's the quantitative side of all of this of figuring out the numbers and the quality cut and the height of cut, all the numbers part. But there's that qualitative part of like, okay, I can do all that, but what do I feel comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
Like one of my big fears is like, we set this thing up to mow and we give it a schedule, and somehow either the irrigation goes off at the wrong time for what we had blocked off, and who knows what happens then, or
Yeah.
the thing just, it's the bed in the middle of the field and the field's supposed to be mowed, and they've got a game that morning, there's a JV football game or something like that the next morning. It's like, oh, the field's got like 4 strips through it, and it's nice 2-inch grass or whatever, but everything else is like 4 inches. And it's like, well, that's not it, but it shouldn't be like that either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I need to, some of this was just saying it out loud to somebody that would appreciate not wanting to go too far and too quickly, which is not like me. I'm usually a jump all the way in the deep end of the pool and figure it out kind of guy. But this one here, I need to.
Well, I feel like,
ease in.
I feel like there's, with the amount of stuff that we have, like space to try things, it's just smarter to get yourself going on something that way than spend a bunch of money on something and then you're just kind of disappointed in, or you end up just going back to what you were going to do, which is you doing some of the work yourself when you spent money to have it automated. So that's kind of what I think is like, I don't want to go all in on all this stuff until I feel comfortable with it. But yeah, I mean, when you work for yourself, I know that there's just endless amounts of things that need to be done in a day. And so sometimes it's not, it's not complaining because there's lots of great opportunities, but you want to also do some of the things that you like to do and some of the projects that you are fun for you. So instead of being out there just sitting on a zero turn for 3 hours, sometimes it would be nice to take that 3 hours and get some other work done.
Sit on the porch and, just watch it work or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're into that kind of thing. Jeez. Well, that'll be, I think that is, probably my biggest just mental hurdle. It's not really a mental hurdle. It's just challenge for this year is figuring out, hey, how does this fit? Where does this fit? And, understanding that it's not going to be a silver bullet, kind of tempering expectations and saying it's okay for this to not work in the certain scenario. Right. But as you alluded to, we probably both have scenarios and use cases where it's like, this is perfect. And if it just does this, that's fine.
Yep.
I'm good with that. I still get to, take charge and command, these other areas and do whatever I need to do. So,
yep.
So, okay. We talked about brome golf holes. We talked about robotic mowers, but what is in it for you this year? Is there any burning desire?
Well, I would like to get some sort of irrigation setup figured out for the bigger area. That's a major thing for me that I've got to do. Otherwise, we're going to crash and burn with me trying to be out there watering stuff because you know how I am. I say I won't do it, but I will be out there.
I know you will.
Would like to get back to, again, like I said, some projects that content-wise, just that would kind of be creative for me and tell some more stories and some different interesting things. So I'm focused on that this year. So I want to be able to take some of the time that I was doing last year, just so many different tasks, and try to figure out a way, if that means somebody helping me do some of those things, whatever it means, it has to allow me to go do some other things this year before I go absolutely nuts. So that's on my list right now, I think, of trying to figure that out.
Listen, I'll chip in the first $50 for you to not go nuts, because I'm pretty sure if you continue on this same trajectory, and I say that because people only hear these conversations, but I'm privy to all the other conversations that we have and how insane and crazy that you take it. And listen, it's not in an unhealthy way, folks. I just think that it's like one of those things when you're committed to something that maybe you get in to doing things, a certain way or whatever, that, you come up for air, so to speak, and you're like, oh my God, like that was a lot.
Yep. A year goes by. And then you're like, I can't do that again. I can't do that same year over. So let's learn some things and get better.
I still want to see at some point, like, you to pull an intern from like Iowa State, from one of the turf programs out there. That would be. Yeah,
that's what I'm going to talk to Dr. Toms and maybe see if we can find someone that might be a good candidate for that. I think that would be, building probably a golf green next year. That would be a good project to work on and everything. There's lots of different stuff going on. So
Always something going on at Westbury. So
Let's go over, if you want to here, just a couple of quick questions that I have been getting in email form. And I think there might be a YouTube comment here somewhere, but it's winter time and there's no snow on the ground. So everyone's main question right now is, what should I be doing to my lawn in this warm winter? And I already said earlier that I probably would be out there mowing if I knew, I shouldn't be doing it. So I've refrained from doing it, but I'm sure there's somebody that has been out there doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say with, the type of grass and the weather that's preceding it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I would say this is that mowing in low temperature stress situations, I don't know that there's a ton of research, refereed peer-reviewed research that is out there on this subject. I will look because now it has me curious.
Well, usually what I would see in the past is if I did do something later in the season, like there was a warm up or something, you kind of get that frost tip burn on things. And then if you mow that off, well, then the grass underneath just kind of gets the same frost tip burn and then it's just brown again. So it does definitely green things up a bit if you take off just a little bit, but that's the next freeze that you get. That's what I've been looking at, is if we're still in hard freezes at night, it just doesn't really make any sense for me to do anything other than it would just simply be for fun anyway. There's really no reason to be out there, but
here's a theory, and we've talked about this a little bit just in the whole hoax of lowering your height of cut going into winter, and the fact that long and floppy textured grass is going to create higher instances of snow mold disease and things like that, which I don't know. I think that's more anecdotal than anything. But here's what I'd offer is just don't have anything to back this up. But imagine that we have, Kentucky bluegrass, any of the cool season grasses that isn't dormant yet, right? Still green, mostly green, somewhere in that spectrum of still actively growing, but it's not actively growing like it's, May or September, October. It's growing very, very slowly. It just has good color because there's still chlorophyll up in the leaf. It hasn't gone fully dormant yet. So my only caution on the mowing piece would be that, okay, hey, that grass is still photosynthesizing to a certain extent. It's still growing, right? If it's growing, then it's photosynthesizing and it's, creating additional carbohydrates. And that's also, using carbohydrates, right? At that point too, to grow. So my challenge would be this. One, if you mow, in theory, we're taking off, area, right? So if I just talk about leaf surface area, if I figure out the number of, square inches or square centimeters of leaf area in a square foot of grass, right? I'm removing a certain amount of that area, that photosynthetic area that could potentially help capture more sunlight and ultimately produce, more food, right? Okay. So that's one caution. Other caution is, like we said, the low temperature stress piece where, we're going to expose newer leaves to more temperature stress. They're going to create more pockets where colder air can settle lower to the ground. Potentially, it's not going to cause anything that's fatal or anything like that, but it could just show up as tip burn or just some signs of low temperature stress. The last piece is that, okay, so what does grass do when you mow it? Okay, it wants to grow, right? Stimulating a growth response. So now I'm in a situation where I'm not really producing sugars at a very, very high or efficient rate, right? And I mow this off, so I've reduced my photosynthetic area, and now the grass is trying to respond and say, oh gosh, I need to grow. I can't grow super fast, but I need to grow faster than I normally would at this stage if I hadn't been mowed. And in that particular case, I think you run the risk of, and again, I'll have to go back and see if there's research that supports this, but this is just plant physiology and how things grow, and it doesn't have to be grass. But in this particular case, in a perennial crop like grass, maybe we're shrinking some of those roots because we're using up carbohydrates at a faster rate than it would be if it was just in its natural state and kind of balancing itself out to a certain degree. So I guess the long and short of it is, if you really want to mow, go for it. But I don't know that there's a huge benefit to it. And more pointedly is that, why are you mowing? Are you just mowing to make yourself feel good, or are you mowing for some agronomic benefit? And I would challenge most people to say that it's very much the former and not so much the latter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And this is in cool season country too, so just qualify that. If you're down in Miami, you better be mowing your damn grass. So.
Another question that I saw says we're dealing with a lot of aggressive moss showing up in some shady spots on our lawn. Is the best way to combat this by spraying a water mix with Dawn soap? Is there a more robust treatment? And they have some pictures here.
Oh, wow.
But it looks, pretty much like a shady area where moss is taking over, not pretty much self-explanatory there. So, I mean, in my mind, the first thing that I'm looking at when I see that is you already talked about shady. So you got a lot of shade. You're probably getting a lot of extra moisture there that's not drying out. So if there's anything possible that you can do to that to open up some more sunlight in there, to get it to dry out more quickly, that's going to be your number one, because it's going to be pretty difficult to do anything else with it when you have that type of situation. And RD, I did share these pictures on our shared little note that we have.
Oh,
so you'll see them underneath the...
Let me pull this up. Okay, I see these now. It is quite a bit of moss. So, I see leaves, but I don't see a tree. I'd be interested to understand, excuse me, what the tree canopy looks like here, because this is some healthy looking moss. So I would suspect that, there's a lot of tree coverage here. And what I'd recommend in this particular scenario is, if you can limb up this tree, and as RK said, allow some more sunlight to get in there, that's going to be your best defense. I think whatever even spraying dish soap, I don't think you're going to have any hugely phytotoxic effects on the grass, but without changing the growing environment, the likelihood that that's going to show back up. Moss is a very persistent plant under the right conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you strongly need to consider what the goal is here. Is it to manage the moss and maybe not make it look so present in the lawn, or is it to eradicate the moss, and get to a better overall stand of grass? So other thing too is, just looking at the wider angle here, there are some density issues. So again, that makes me call into question just what's going on here with tree coverage and maybe compacted soils too. Wet environments favor moss. So, we couple shade with, highly compacted soil or a lot of root competition there. So
that's what I was going to say. If they could possibly get some more of the appropriate grass, like if it's going to be a shadier area, even if you can get some more sunlight to there, but you get the appropriate, maybe some fine fescues in there, or the right type of tall fescue that can do some better, that will do better in those conditions, then that's going to help to fight off some of that. Because I've noticed in my shade testing spots that anywhere, it starts to thin out, that's where the moss will really start to grow into it first. You're just giving it the opportunity to start taking over. So
I see. Yeah. Oh, there you go. I think that's an interesting point too about species selection in those lawns. So to that point about, are you trying to eradicate, or are you just trying to manage it? I think, I do see it's just, walking around the neighborhood, older neighborhood, lots of big trees, things like that. I do see a lot of lawns that have partial to, mostly full shade that are predominantly fine fescue. And I mostly older types. A lot of these lawns are, 40, 50 more years old. And, the moss and fine fescue look, if you're okay with moss and you're okay with a not perfect, quote unquote, air quotes there, that you can't see on audio, but I did it. I could prove it. But I think in those cases, it is, it's okay. I'd say it's acceptable if you're okay with a less than perfect lawn.
Yep.
I think it registers on the continuum of a good lawn. How's that?
I totally agree. I think sometimes, same with like fighting POA in certain areas that are just,
good point.
It's just going to be a never ending battle. I mean, sometimes maybe you just have to learn to live with the way it is and go with it. But that was a good question. So I know there's a lot of people that ask about moss, and I think have similar feelings like, what am I going to do to get rid of this? But maybe sometimes the answer isn't that it needs to go away 100%, and you can kind of let it grow with some other things and have it still look pretty decent. So,
All right.
well, I think RD, that is what I had to cover tonight. And, we're cutting a little bit short maybe from our usual shows, but I'm trying to make sure we're concise with the info, get a few questions in here and there. And hopefully that means we can do a few more shows this year. At least that's also in my goal list for doing some more shows, having a few more questions from you guys on here as well.
Absolutely. It's always good to catch some questions. We'll put the bat signal out we'll do a rapid fire one. I always like the rapid fire RK turf grass questions. It keeps me sharp.
Yeah.
Like it's warding off the Alzheimer's and other, neurological diseases of old age. So I like it. It's better than a crossword,
Definitely.
I'm not a big crossword guy.
Yeah, we'll do that next time. We'll do some rapid fire questions, and I think that's a request. So you guys send in some things, and we appreciate, as always, that you took some time to listen to the show. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.